Okay, in this quick video, we're going to cover the three different scenarios of dealing with processing your pays over the Christmas period. So the first scenario is if you are closed for the entire Christmas break, and that's a relatively straightforward one because TimeHub will just sit there with nobody clocking, so there'll be no data. So basically what you would do if that was the case is that you would process your pay up to and including whenever people were finishing work, and then when you come back from your break, basically TimeHub will be sitting here, if I just undo this one for a second, with one or more weeks of data, which will all be zero, or be sitting there with nothing in them. Now, obviously, there is potentially for public holidays to have calculated by TimeHub, but we're in this scenario, we are assuming that everything that you will do will be handled in your payroll system, not coming from TimeHub, because there's nothing to post. And TimeHub, bear in mind, is a live system. So all you would do when you came back from your break is you would simply just pull the pay period, post it, let it create the file. Don't take that into your payroll system because it doesn't need to go into the payroll system, and that's all good. So that's straightforward. The other scenario you may find under this particular case is that you've got part of a week that you want to post to your payroll, and then the rest you want to do manually. So what you would do is you would come into Daily Times as you normally would. You would unfilter, so take out all the filter options. You would set it to not only show finish days because you want to include, if I was doing this on a Friday, for example, and I wanted to pre-process everything for next week, I would need to clean out my data in TimeHub, so I make sure that I'm showing today's date. I would show days not expected to work, so if there was any leave floating around in here, and then I would search that. This will then give me all data for all employees as it currently sits, and then I would go through and check that, maintain it as needed. So obviously there's a case where we may have some employees, if we're doing this today to roll over the pay period for next week, we'll have people who've clocked in. So what you have to do in that particular case is assume a clock out time on their behalf. So basically you would just go in and say, okay, I know that you're going to be going home at 1600, and I'll put that into a job number because I need to for this particular case, and I will put that to none. So if you're not doing labour costing, you don't need to worry about any of this stuff. So now I've got some times in there to pay the employee. Then I would go and do the normal process where I would come in, I would pull my pay period. Now in this case, I'm only going to be pulling it for a couple of days. It will not include any public holidays. It's only dealing with the data. So when you're pre-processing from TimeHub to payroll, and you're going to be doing most of this will be done in the payroll because the event hasn't happened yet, so TimeHub doesn't know about it yet. So basically, I would pull my data and then I would post it to payroll as I normally would. Now that will post only a part of a week if that was the case, and then I would go into payroll and import the data as I normally would, but I would, in this case, I would get 2 or 3 or 4 days, and I've still got some data missing. So I would then come in, import my data. In this case, I'm using Crystal as an example, but I would import my data. Then I would go in and deal with the public holidays, deal with any leave that people have taken, etc., because this is all happening after TimeHub's cutoff date. And then I would carry on. But what I need to do at that particular point is then go back to TimeHub, undo the post to payroll, and let the rest of the data accumulate over the break while we're away. And then at the end, when I come back to work, I then repost it all out, but I don't put it into the payroll. I just basically roll it over if that's the case. So then we'll look at the second option if you're only closed on the public holidays. Right, in our second option where the business is only closed on the public holidays, then that's just basically business as normal. You would process your TimeHub in the way that you would normally process it. Again, bearing in mind that if your normal payday falls on a public holiday, then you need to treat that slightly differently because obviously you'll need to either pre-post it or you'll pre-process it or you'll need to process it after the public holiday. But in general, you would just do the normal process. And if you were doing the normal process, then the employees, as we described in the other video, would come up with public holidays in the week. You would check and address those as we've already described, and then you would process it through the payroll as per normal. So if you're trading through, that's a pretty straightforward scenario. And then the third scenario is if you are prepaying before the end of the week. So for example, as we just looked at before, if I was looking at, I'll just undo this back to the daily time screen. So if we were processing our data and I needed to fix up what was going to happen. So again, we would come back in here, we would clear the flags, we would show today, and we would show days not expected to work, and we would search that. So now I've got all the data. So I've got some employees in here who haven't clocked yet now, or they haven't clocked out yet. So obviously I need to address that because the day hasn't finished, but I wanting to pay it as if the day has finished. Now, what this won't include is anything for example, if I was doing this on a Friday and I had staff working on a Saturday or a Sunday, or even potentially the Monday, what I would have to do is just process what I've got in TimeHub, make today valid or any other day in the current week valid, and then address it in the payroll again. But once I've put this data in here, then what I would do is I would post it through to payroll as we've already described. So making sure that this data is going across, I would then go into my payroll system. I would add the missing hours. So that if I'm guesstimating hours for Saturday and Sunday, I would go in here and add my Saturday and Sunday into my payroll system to make sure that it was calculating the right number of hours for the employee. I would also obviously process any public holidays because they haven't happened yet as far as TimeHub is concerned. Then what I would do is in TimeHub, having posted that data out, I would come in here. So I would have posted to payroll. So I'm just going to quickly pull that and post that. So I've posted my data. Then what I need to do is, because the employees are still going to be clocking out at the end of today, so we still want their live transactions. So having pushed that data across to payroll, then once that's in the payroll and I'm happy that I've got everything in the payroll I need, I then undo my pay period post, which brings this data back as if it hasn't been posted. That way, when the employees do clock out, I will get some real times coming through, and then I can address that data as the case may be, clean it up. I can also look at what the difference was between what we've got here and what we've put into the payroll, and then that data will just roll over and accumulate as it normally does. So again, that's a slightly more complicated example. For most of you, it'll either be that you are pre-processing your data or you're processing as you go through the process of the pay period and through the public holidays. If you're in the third scenario, it may pay you to give us a call and we can just make sure that we've got that covered for you. Um, but it is pretty straightforward. You've just got to bear in mind that if a date hasn't happened yet, TimeHub doesn't know about it. So that's a manual process in your payroll system. And you can sit here with empty days and nobody clocking day after day. It'll just roll over and nothing will happen. But what you've got to watch out for is that you don't want to push through a public holiday to payroll, which has already been processed in the payroll, which is why we don't actually, when we post this, we don't pull it into the payroll on the other side. So hopefully that's nice and clear, probably clear as mud. Anyway, if you need any help, you know where we are.